Today we're talking about 2 new gods coming into Smite. Now, we already had some information about the next coming god in the most recent data mining, but Smite data mining has found some more on this god, that is Heimdallr. And on the other hand, there's also information on the god or goddess afterwards. It's less clear, so we'll discuss that after and go into the more fully formed out kit first. But it's going to be very interesting because this time we don't have a god name, but we have some information that we can speculate with. But for now, let's start with Heimdallr. The first bit of information that we have about him is that he deals physical damage. We already knew that before, but we don't have any specifics on which character, which class he will be, though it is very likely that he's either going to be a warrior or an assassin, based on the fact that he will likely have melee attacks. He will have a double axe as a weapon, and this has a node saying X1 hits in area. That could mean that the first swing of his attack chain might be an AoE attack, because X1 isn't further clarified beyond that, so it might just be that that refers to the first hit. That's of course something that would be interesting for both warriors and assassins, clearing lane or jungle camps faster that way. Additionally, he has weapon horn, maybe as a secondary weapon, so there might be a possibility that he has a weapon swap. And the horn, as notes previously, had horn circle and horn cone, meaning that maybe it has some cone AoE effect when you blow the horn. But this has been expanded on. There's a new node under his general information. This is not specifically under the horn, but it could be tied to the horn as well. And that's 2 things: vision debuff and vision orbs. I feel fairly safe to assume that vision debuff has something to do with some kind of blind mechanic similar to Ra, or more recently similar to Set, who has this limited vision debuff. And I could imagine that if that tech was successful, they might apply that to more characters. So I could see that being used here again. But I'm not quite sure what vision orbs mean in that context. Of course, they could possibly be the effect that gives the debuff to somebody, but they could also have some additional impact. We don't know about that. So regarding his basic attacks, like I said, we know that they're melee, and it also is stated that they are chained melee attacks, meaning it will be some sort of combo. It's also not clear if these melee attacks do have projectiles, because there is a mention for a projectile, but it seems like the primary damage will be from these melee attacks, and maybe the projectile has something to do with the horn. The passive also only has 1 node so far, and that is that it seems to mark enemies. Maybe this is something that will be done through the horn, we don't know. The first ability now has new information. Previously it didn't have any info at all. Now it says AoE explosion and ground targeter. I couldn't really find anything for Heimdall that relates to an explosion, except for a joke on the Smite Reddit about a god concept for Heimdallr. But at the same time, this doesn't have to be taken literally anyways. It could be some AoE effect that they just label as an explosion to make it a bit more easy to understand the base mechanic behind it. The second ability has a little tiny bit of change information. What we knew before is that the ability is a hit pulse, meaning it can be toggled as an effect on basic attacks basically, similar to what Freya's 2 used to be until this patch. Now it's reverted, but that kind of style of effect, or Ram's 1 for example. The node that is changed was before it had a cone pull back, and now this is a knockback instead, a cone knockback. This can also be cancelled with right click or interrupted. It has a target effects and a tremble. Now what I think this could be is Heimdall switching over from his axe to his horn and then blowing that horn, which can be interrupted as a channeled ability basically. The question is, previously this seemed logical as a pullback. As a knockback it makes more sense in terms of using a horn, you blow the horn and the enemy gets knocked back from it. But how exactly will this knockback make sense? We now have gods that have a consistent, long-lasting knockback. So for example, Nike, who can really limit enemies in their potential for a long time. But an infinite knockback is probably not an option. So that's a bit weird. So maybe this toggle has charges of some kind. But what I don't understand in that regard is that it seems that Heimdallr is someone who wants enemies to be close from what I understand so far, so he can directly fight them, because he's got melee attack chain as well. And in that regard, it makes very little sense that he would knock enemies back. Then again, this could possibly hint a little bit more towards him being a warrior, so he has some damaging tools and also some zoning tools at the same time, similar to Nike. His third ability has 2 versions. The old version deploys an auto portal. This triggers a cooldown of 5 seconds and has a delay of 2 seconds for the fire of the event. There is a teleport, so the cooldown of fire event is probably the cooldown for transporting people or transporting yourself. There's a chance that it could also possibly only teleport basic attacks, and this is also deployable. The new version seems to have seen some changes, but generally keeps the original idea of the older ability. It has a ground targeter now, and there is a travel ball, which is possibly you or whatever or whoever travels when you move through the portal. Kinda imagine it as if you're going through a Janus portal, and while you're in the state of traveling in between the portals, then I guess you would be the travel ball at that point. And as the ultimate seems to possibly expand on this traveling, we're gonna go into that right away. So the ultimate was a chain device, meaning it's a series of events. There is a tunnel, some camera movements or camera changes, and there's also a stun. Apparently the tunnel can make you into a charge, maybe also similar to Janus ult, and maybe even tied to the 3 somehow, but I doubt it. I don't think you can otherwise use the 3 without the ult, so that wouldn't really make sense. And the last event seems to be a charge, which is stopping on a guard. Stage 1 and stage 2 of this are explosions. The ultimate seems to be very epic or cinematic, with Heimdallr having an intro and other things. Think about it like Apollo ultimate, which makes him do things, and then your camera changes. The ultimate stages are intro, where you apparently have a victim. The intro plays with him and the victim entering into the tunnel or something similar, and that then triggers a teleport. Stage 1, where some sections change visibility and a timer is triggered, and if the timer is down, then there's a stage 1 explosion. Stage 2, where there's another explosion with some section changing visibility again, and it also does another teleport. And then the outro, where the camera changes end, where the camera returns to normal and the tunnel changes visibility again. And stage 1 and 2 are 2 seconds each. My speculation for that last time was that this is going to be related to the Bifrost, which is the burning rainbow bridge between Midgard and Asgard. Now there are some new effects here. And first of all, there's an exit portal FX, which makes sense, just leaving the portal. And there is a fire damage on time. I'm guessing this might be overtime. That would make sense with it being a burning rainbow bridge. So fire damage is very logical. On the other hand, there's also an ice hit FX and an ice slow FX. Now, while Bifrost is spelled similar to it, it doesn't have anything to do with frost in itself, as far as I'm aware. But on the other hand, it would be easy enough to add some visual frost effect to contrast the fire effect. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe there's one stage where you take some damage over time. There's another stage where you're slowed. And again, I still speculate on this possibly being some sort of dragging the enemy away from the fight and having some short 1v1 scenario similar to Naja's ultimate. And last but not least, there's also an effect that just says X hit, but that could just be a melee attack picking the enemy up or something. And that's probably all the information we'll get for Heimdallr in terms of data mining, because he will probably be coming out next month and usually there isn't any additional information beforehand, but we have info for the god or goddess after. And what we know here is that god number 108 has the working title Magnolia. This is what hybrids used to do back in the day. They would not release god names and give some hints at best. The hint here may give us something to work with, but it's very vague speculations, I would say. So a possible option that some people have pointed out is that it could be Saraswati, one of the Hindu goddesses, which Juniper Garcia actually made an artwork for. She is the goddess of music, inner peace and swans, and she is often depicted with a lotus. Not quite a magnolia, but visually it would be somewhat matching. But interestingly enough, it wouldn't actually be Saraswati, because Ajax stated at some point that we're gonna have another Japanese god or goddess this year. There is a Japanese version of Saraswati, which is Ben Zaiten, and she is a goddess that I guess kind of transitioned between these cultures, a Japanese Buddhist goddess, and kind of follows the same theme. She's the goddess of flow and everything that includes: water, time, words, speech, eloquence, music, and by extension knowledge. So with her often being depicted as sitting on those lotus flowers as well, this could again point in that direction, but at the same time we have to say those are lotus plants and not magnolias. The other thing that would kind of speak against it is that she doesn't really seem to be a highly requested goddess, but then again, that's not necessarily always something that restricts high-risk god choices. There's also some completely different speculation on the grounds that Magnolia translates to Mulan in Chinese, and this could have something to do with, well, what we know as the Disney character Mulan, which is the Princess Hua Mulan, but she doesn't really have a background in mythology so much as it is more folklore. So at the end of the day, I would not be surprised if the Magnolia hint isn't really something that will indicate which god it is. Maybe it's just one of the letters, the first letter is an M or something, and we might get something completely different. But we'll see, that is what we know so far, and as soon as we know more, I will let you know. So if you're new to the channel, feel free to the sub button and maybe the bell to get notified of that. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you all for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.